Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 122 in our incredible new tutorial series where you are unleashing the power of your Raspberry Pi Pico W. What I will need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee, poured over ice. No sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Sunfounder. Sunfounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of video lessons, and in this class, we will be using the Kepler kit for Raspberry Pi Pico W. Now, hopefully most of you guys already have your gear, but if you don't, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon, and you can hop on over there and pick your kit up. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot easier if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you my solution to the homework assignment that I gave you in lesson number 121. But I must start by asking, were you successful? If you got the homework done, leave a comment down below. I am legend, double chest bump. And if you were not successful, leave a comment down below. I folded up like a cheap Walmart lawn chair. Okay. Hopefully most of you got it. I will admit that this one required a little bit of thinking. And let me just kind of show you, remind you what the homework assignment was. So I will get out of your way. We'll take a look here at our circuit, and you can see that we have the Raspberry Pi Pico W, we have the RFID module, we have an RGB LED, we have two buttons, and we have a servo. And the way this thing is supposed to work is you cannot access control of the servo until you unlock the system, and you unlock the system with an RFID card. Now, the RFID card doesn't have to be activated just for this step along the way. Any card can unlock the system, but once it's unlocked, then you can control the servo position with these two buttons. But while the system is locked, the RGB LED is red, and if we try to come in and do something, nothing happens because the system is locked. But if we come in and we unlock it by swiping the card, now we can control the position of the servo. And wait for it, if you turn the system off and turn it back on, and then you unlock it, it starts right where it left off. Now also, not just for that RFID tag, but each RFID tag, it remembers its last position. So if I come in and unlock with this one, you see it was at about 75 degrees. But if I come in and I unlock with this one, it goes to 135 degrees. So it remembers the position of the servo associated with each card. Even if you lose power, turn it back on, and then you read it, and then it stays at 135 for that one, or I got to let it lock, or you unlock it and then it goes to its position. Okay, so you kind of had to think through this a little bit because there was a way that you might have thought of doing it that was probably not the best way to do it. So never fear, I am going to go through this and I'm going to show you my solution. So let's come over here and let's start by going to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. Then you're going to use this happy little search icon here, and you're going to search on something like RFID project to lock and unlock control of the servo. And then this is the schematic that I'm using. Now, last week you already had the RGB LED, the current limiting resistors, the up button and the down button. And so what's really added today is the servo, and the servo is connected, the orange line connected to GPIO 0, so that should be pretty easy to add. Now, very important, on this breadvolt, this power rail up here is set to 5 volts with this jumper. This jumper sets this power rail to 5 volts, but down here, this power rail down here is set to 3.3 volts using this jumper. So lower jumper is set to 3.3 volts, upper jumper is set to 5 volts. Why? The servo runs better if it is powered at 5 volts, but it is controlled with 3 volts, if that makes sense. And that's just what I found works the best. So that's where you want to start. Now, also what we want to do is we want to start where we left off last week, and that was just basically the lock and unlock function and the ability to turn the RGB LED on and off as we locked and unlocked it. So that sort of locking and unlocking and timing we did last week. So what we want to do is go get that code from last week. If you didn't save it, you can search on RFID lock and unlock demonstration project. You'll come to this page. You can come down here. Remember, this is the schematic without the servo added. And then this is the code that we ended up with last week. So we're going to come in and copy that, and then we're going to come over here and we are going to paste it. And then this should just basically not be doing anything with the servo, but just locking and unlocking. And so let's go ahead and run this and make sure that the universe is in proper working order. And to run it, we're going to need to connect this back. Okay, and now we will connect to the Raspberry Pi Pico W. We will run this, and okay, it says reading, please place the card. I place the card, it unlocks, and it starts with a count of 0. And let me see if I can unlock it. And then you see button count down, button count up. Okay, and then it will lock again after 5 seconds, and then we unlock it, and then we can continue moving. Okay, so this all looks like it's working, the basic lock and unlock function, but now instead of just a count, what we want these buttons to do is to control the position of the servo, and then we want it to remember, based on the card that unlocked it, what the last position of the servo was. And so you can always go back to that. You can start where you left off when you go to this card. So this card has a certain angle associated with it, and this card has a certain angle associated with it. So let's come in, and the first thing we're going to need to do is we are going to need to get that servo set up. And so there's a couple of other things that we're going to need to do up here at the top. And one of them is, and I'll just give it away right now, we're going to import micro JSON. Now, when I gave this assignment, it very well could be that your first intuition was to save the servo position on the card. And so like if this was at a servo position of 20 degrees, save 20 degrees on the card. But the problem is if you lose power, you can't say, oh, put your card up here so I can write to it. No, if you lose power, it loses power instantaneously, and you wouldn't have a chance to put that data on the card. And so the card gives you access to the Raspberry Pi Pico W and access to the buttons, but you don't save the last angle on the card. You save the last angle in the flash. The card allows you to unlock. Now, each card has a unique ID, and I want to keep track of the last angle, the last servo angle for this card, and the last servo angle, which would be different from this card, but I'm not saving that angle on a card. I am saving that angle to flash. And since you're going to have different angles associated with different cards, what we're going to do is we're going to create a dictionary, and that dictionary is going to remember all the cards that we're using as the index or the key, and then it's going to store the value associated with that card in the value position of the dictionary. So I'll have an ID and a colon and its angle. I'll have an ID and a colon and its angle for all the cards that we are using. So with that, we will need to import micro-JSON because we will be saving a dictionary into the flash memory. So that is pretty good. The unlock time, we have the decrement pin, we have the increment pin. We are also now going to need a what? A servo pin. And what did we say that was? Pin 0. Okay, that was pin 0. Let me turn that off so we're not running our battery down while we're sitting here. Also, let me come over here and let me stop the program. Let me just see if I can turn that. I'm just going to see red LED dot off. I don't know if I can do that, but yeah. Okay, just so that we're starting with a clean slate here. So we've got the servo pin set up. Now we have the decrement button. We have the increment button. That's good. Now we are going to have the red pin, the green pin, the blue pin, as we did last week. That's good. Then we create the red, the green, the blue LED objects. That's good. Then we have the red LED is on because we are starting with the thing locked. So that makes sense. We're going to start with the red LED on because we're starting with the thing locked. And then the green LED is off and the blue LED is off. Then we have the increment but state, the increment but state. That's all good from last week. So this is just all the things we need to set up for our buttons. Okay. Now we also are going to have the deck but state and the deck but state old, and so those are good. And now here what we're going to need to do is get the servo set up. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say my servo is equal to PWM of pin, of what? The servo pin, like that. Okay, now let's make sure we set the servo pin up here. Yes, servo pin is 0, and we did import PWM, which you see that we're going to need now. So now we've got that set up. My servo is PWM of pin of servo pin, and now my servo dot frequency, we set it at 50 Hertz. And, we gave a lot of work on the servo in earlier lessons. If you're not familiar with that, go back in the earlier lessons in this class and watch the servo video. But here I'm not going to explain it a lot because we've already done this. Now, what we also need is just the first time we run it, we need to just set a servo angle. And let's just say that servo angle starts at 0. Now, what we're really going to do is we're really going to unlock it by scanning the card. Then for that card ID, we're going to go and we're going to load the JSON file, and we're going to find out what the particular last angle is associated with this card. But it's always good to give an initial value just to make sure things don't crash your first time through. Okay, with that now, what we have to think is, like if I come over here and say file, if I say view files, the very first time that I run, this program, it is not going to have this dictionary file. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. So the first time you run the program, there will not be a dictionary file there. And so if you go in and swipe this and then try to go read the dictionary, the first time you run the program, it is going to crash. And so what do we need to do? We need to make sure that we set up that dictionary file the first time that we run the program. And so what we need to do is we need to come in and say, let's just try to open that file up. So I'm going to say F is equal to open, and then it is going to be the /, meaning the root file on the Raspberry Pi Pico W, and the file is going to be dictionary, dict.json, okay? And then we're going to open it to read like that, and then we're going to say my Servo dictionary is going to be equal to micro JSON dot load. And what are we going to load from F? And so there we'll get if it is there, we will get that that dictionary. Okay, and then what we'll do is F dot close like that. Okay, now what is going to happen? The first time we run this, it is going to crash right here because there is no dictionary file there. So let's just say accept, and for right now just put a pass. Let's see if this thing will run right now. Okay, so it did run and it says it's locked. Now I'm going to come and I'm going to try to unlock it. Okay, and I would have thought that that would have crashed there. Oh, okay. I see. It didn't crash because it just came down here and jumped over it. Okay, let me just show you what would happen. And let's see here. I want you to understand why we're doing this. And so if I come in here now, I'm going to take the try out, and we're just going to come in and try to open the file. And if we do that, okay, what it says is in line 35, there is basically not that file there. In line 35, there's not that file there, and therefore it crashes. So what we want to do is we want to prevent that crash, and we're going to say try. And so you try to do this if you can. Okay, but instead of crashing like it just did, we want to do an accept. And on the accept, what I want to do is, I know there's not a file there, and so I'm going to create it. I'm going to say my dictionary is just going to be equal to an empty dictionary. We'll put stuff in it later, but let's just get an empty dictionary. Now let's say file is equal to open. And what do we want to open? The dictionary file.json, like that, comma, open it as a write. Now, what will this do? If it's not there and you open it as a write, it will create it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is a micro JSON.dump like that. What do I want to dump? My dictionary, which is empty, to F like this. Okay. And then I'm going to do an f.close. All right, f.close. Now, if we look over here, you see that there's no dictionary file. Now I'm going to run this, and then it says, okay, all is good. And then I'm going to unlock it. It says it is unlocked, which is good. And now I got to figure out how to get this to read again over here. Okay, now what do you see? Over here, you see the JSON file has been created. If we look at that JSON file, you can see that it's completely empty. But you see, we created it instead of crashing, and so that is good. I'm going to close it now. So we've done that little bit of error checking and that little bit of making sure that our program doesn't crash the first time we run it. Now I'm not going to look at the files anymore because that's just kind of in the way. So I've got this. Where did I put that try? On the wrong program. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now what I have is I have this try, and if the file isn't there, it's going to crash, and then here it's going to create it. So by the time I get to this line of code, the file will be there. It might be blank, but it will be there. Now what we got to do is, in defining this read RFID, now what I want to do is, when I read the card, I get its ID. At this point, I want to get the angle that is associated with that ID. But the angle isn't on the card. The angle is in the dictionary. Okay, so what I've got is I've got the global and I've got the card ID. Also now I want the servo angle to be global. So the other parts of the program, that as I determine the servo angle, the other parts of the program will have that. Okay, so I read it. I remind everyone that the system is locked. Then I say, please place the card. I read it. Okay, and now what do I have when I read it? I have card ID. Now I've got to read text as well, but read text doesn't have anything. It is the card ID I want. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead and print that card ID. So when you scan it, it's going to print the card ID. But what we want now is we want the servo angle associated with that card, and we get that from the dictionary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say try again, and F is equal to open, and then what is it going to be? The /dictionary.json, like that, comma, and I'm going to open it as a read, like that. Okay, now I'm going to get from it my servo dictionary. So this will get all of the angles associated with all the cards that have been seen. So servo dictionary is going to be equal to micro.json.load, and I'm going to load from where? Load from F, and then I'm going to do f.close, like that, and then I'm going to print servo angle, like that. All right, now what is the problem? The first time that you get here, the first time that you've used the system, that JSON file is empty because it hasn't seen any cards yet, and it hasn't put any data in that dictionary. So the first time you swipe a card, that card is not going to be in the dictionary. So then what is going to happen? Oh, I need to also say here, after I've closed it, I need to say that the servo angle is equal to the servo dictionary that we've just read, the servo dictionary of the what? The card ID. So how are we going to make that dictionary? It is going to be a card ID colon the angle associated with that card, and then the next card ID and colon the angle associated with it. But the first time, so it would be servo angle is servo dictionary of the card ID that you just read. But if it hasn't seen this card yet, there is no card ID of that one. And so what's going to happen at this step? It is going to crash. So what we're going to do is then say except when it crashes the first time it's seen a card, what do we want to do? We want to F is equal to open the /dictionary.json. We want to open it to read, like that. Okay, and now I'm going to say my dictionary is going to be equal to micro.json.load. It'll load because we know there's a dictionary there. It might be empty, but it will load. And then after it is loaded, what we're going to do is f-close. And now I have my dictionary. But I know the only way I got down here was that it didn't know the card ID. So now that my dictionary, what am I going to do to my dictionary of card ID? Okay, that is going to be equal to servo angle. All right, so I got down here in the except because there was no card ID for the new card. And so I come down here and now I edit my dictionary to make the value of that new card ID be whatever the servo angle is, which I am getting because it is a global variable. So when I get here, this will know what the servo angle is already. So now I have a good, clean dictionary that has the new card in it. So what do I need to do? I need to write that. So I need to say F is equal to open slash dictionary.json, close, comma, W, like that. Okay. And then I'm going to do a micro JSON.dump of what my dictionary, and then I'm going to do an f.close. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead here, and since I read that card, I'm going to go ahead to the correct servo angle for that card, which is stored and updated in that dictionary. Okay, does that make sense? So let's just kind of see what happens here. Let's see if this thing will run. And I'm going to go back and look at the file again. Okay, so I'm going to look at my files, and let's see if we can open up that JSON file there. Okay, you see it's empty. And so now let's see if this thing will run. I hope it'll run. Okay, so now it wants me to unlock. And so I'm going to unlock with this card. And then what does it say? The button count is 0. Darn it, why does it keep coming to that wrong one here? Okay, let's run it again. I'm going to close that program because it's doing us absolutely no good. It keeps jumping there. Okay, so this was the program we were on. So now we are going to run this program, and it wants me to unlock, and so I will unlock, and it didn't like line 73. Okay, read RFID, and then it goes to line 65, micro JSON.dump, my dictionary, comma F. All right. Rookie mistake. So, okay, there it is. Now we are going to unlock. It says it was unlocked by that card. Okay, so that's good. So it didn't crash, but let's come over here and let's close that and let's look at that again. Let me stop it. And let me look at the JSON file again. Okay, and look at that. Now the JSON file has this card in it, and it has it at 0 because, right, the first time that it's run and no button has been pushed and no card has been programmed, it just starts it at 0. Okay, now let's close this. Let's run this program again. Okay, now I'm going to unlock it with this one. And when I unlock it with that one, now I'm going to come back and I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to look at the JSON file. And now I have 2 cards and they're both set to 0. Okay, I have 2 cards and they're both set to 0. Now you see it's not moving the servo because I haven't really gone in and started playing with that yet, playing with the buttons. But what happens is it adds card. If there's not a dictionary, it puts a dictionary. And if it hasn't seen a card, it adds the card to the dictionary. Okay, so that is really like half the battle right there. So we have all of that stuff working. Now what I'm going to need is, I'm surprised. Okay. Now what we need is let me see here. Okay, in the accept. Now what I want to do here is actually at this point, now that I've read the angle and have the angle, I want to set the angle. So you notice the servo wasn't moving, so we want to at this point say move servo like that. Okay, and same thing up here. If it does work, go ahead and move servo, and don't worry about sending it an angle because servo angle is shared between everyone. So now we got to define that function. How do we move the servo, right? Because now we're ready to move the servo. So I'm going to define move servo like that. And now we need a colon here. So the right val, and go back and watch those earlier lessons because we really developed how to get this equation. But the right value is 6553 divided by 180 times servo angle. So this is the servo angle that we want, plus 1638. So this is the global variable, the servo angle that we want, and then it turns it into a PWM right value, which will actually then put the servo at that angle. So then we'll say my servo dot duty underscore unsigned 16 of the integer value of right val, like that, close, close. Now that will apply that, okay? Now I think at that point it might, doing nothing more than that, it might move the servo when we run it. So let's see if that does this time. Okay, system locked, and then when I say move the card, it says a servo angle of 0. Okay, but it didn't actually move it. I didn't have this turned on. Okay, so now you see when you go like that, it does actually put it to the 0 value, which was in the JSON file. The reason it didn't do it the first time, I had turned the power module off, and the project is being powered on this side by the Raspberry Pi Pico W, but this upside up here was not getting power from the breadbolt. So everything's working as we would expect. But now when you move the servo, you have to think at any time you might have a power outage. So what we got to make sure is that we are updating that dictionary. So now that I've moved the servo to a position as it was unlocked by a particular card, I need to say F is equal to open the /dictionary.json with a read like that. Okay, and now my dictionary is going to be equal to micro JSON.load from F. Okay, now I've got my dictionary, so I can close F, and now my dictionary of the card that was used to unlock the system is now going to be equal to servo angle. Why do we need to do that? Because maybe you mashed a button and moved, mashed a button and moved, mashed a button and moved. Every time you move that servo, you have to change the servo angle in the dictionary associated with the card that unlocked the system. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we have updated the dictionary, but now we have to write it. And I think that if I just copy these 3 lines of code, now I need to write that. So now we are going to open that same thing as a write, and then what we are going to do is we are going to do a micro JSON dot dump like that, and now we're going to have a fresh dictionary in the flash with the new angle associated with the card that unlocked it, if that makes true. You know, guys, that is most of the battle right there. Now here we turn the red LED on if it gets here because it's locked. The green is off, the blue LED is off, and then we're going to read, okay? And then we're going to say that the system was unlocked by a certain card. Okay, we'll go ahead and say what the card was that unlocked it. That's fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create the timer on the unlock time. We talked about that last week. And then what we're going to do is we are going to have the if the increment is, if the button is pressed, then we're down in here. But now, instead of doing button count, if we're incrementing, we're going to say the servo angle is equal to servo angle plus, let's say, 10 degrees. All right. So we're playing with the servo now. Now we're going to say if the servo angle is greater than 180 degrees, then just say servo angle equal 180 degrees. What are we making sure that we don't try to move the servo further than it can? And similarly, if the servo angle is less than 0, then we'll just say the servo angle is equal to 0, like that. Okay, and so now that is good. And now what do we want to do? Well, we want to then, if the button is pressed and we're in the right range, then we just move the servo. And since the servo angle is a global variable, it will go up there and it will know where to move. So we're going to move the servo angle. Now we're going to do almost the same thing here. We're going to do almost the same thing here. Okay, but we're not going to print the button count because we're not doing button count anymore. Okay, but what we're going to do is we've just got to do the other button. For the decrement button, it's going to be the same thing. So we're going to get all of this. Okay, we're going to get all of this and we're going to paste it here. But this time, instead of inc but, we're going to do decrement. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to do decrement. And then the servo angle is going to be the servo angle minus 10. And then similarly, make sure that we keep it in the right range. And then after we update the servo angle and have it in the right range, then we are going to move the servo. Okay. And then we're going to reset. A button has been pressed, so we are going to reset the unlock time, and we're going to pause. And I think that should be done if either button is mashed. Okay. Okay, so a couple of things I need to do here. This, inside of this, inside of this, I do need to say move servo like that. I don't think I did a good job copying and pasting, but if I press the button, then I want to move the servo. If I press the other button, I want to move the servo. Okay, and then in both cases, I want to do these two steps. Okay, so if I increment, I do this. If I decrement, I do almost the same thing. And then I need to get rid of this because that was the old one. That's decrement again, which I just put in from scratch. So I've got the increment that updates the angle and then moves the servo. I've got the decrement, which decreases the angle, moves the servo, and then the data is stored up there in move servo. So you see in move servo, I update the dictionary. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's see if there's anything else. Is that really that easy? Okay, let's come in now and let's see if I can turn off those files. Okay, so now I'm going to turn this back on, and now I'm going to run this. Whoa, line 72. What happened on line 72? I thought we'd gotten through all of that. Okay, so move servo, right value. that was, close that. All right, that's good. That one kind of scared me. In line 75, did the same thing like that. The dangers of copying and pasting: live by copy and paste and die. Okay, so now I'm going to take this card and I'm going to go like that. And now it doesn't like line 82, which is read RFID, which takes me to line 66, which doesn't like my servo. Move servo, move servo. And that doesn't like '76. Okay, what is it not like about micro JSON.dump in my servo? Rookie mistake. I've got to do, what was it, my dictionary. I just got in a hurry here, guys. Okay, so I got to do a micro JSON.dump of my dictionary into F. So now let's try it. Okay, now we're going to read the card, and it says authentication error, so it didn't see it. So there, it unlocked, and now I am decrementing it, okay, to there. Now, let's say it should lock up again. Okay, now I use this card, and then that card did not go to the new position for that card. So let's see if I put that. Okay, so I'm going to put this one here, and then it's going to lock, and then it goes back to that one's position. Okay. And then it's going to go back to this one's position. And then it's going to go to that one's position. Okay, so the first time through, I'd never pressed a button. The first time through, I'd never pressed a button with this one, so it didn't have a value associated with it. So you have to give it a position before it'll go back to that position. So now we read it. It stays there. Let's say that we go to 90 on that one. Okay, then we'll let it lock. Then this one, we're going to go all the way to 0 on that one. Okay, now this one, let's read it. Okay, it goes there. Let it lock. It goes to 0. Now, the moment of truth, I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Save as Raspberry Pi Pico W. Let's save this as main.py. Save as main.py like that. Yes. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this off. We're going to unplug it. And now we are going to turn it on. Okay, it comes up locked. We're going to read it. It stays at 0. And then read it. It goes to 90. Read it. It goes to 0. Now let's say instead of 0, we're going to take that one to 180. Okay, now we're going to turn it off. We're going to turn it back on. This one was at what? Something that looked like 90. It goes to 90. This one was at what? Something that looked like 180. And so, boom, we go to 180. Okay, and guys, look, this thing is operating out here completely by itself. It's not even connected to the computer over Wi-Fi. It is operating autonomously here in our hand, and it's locking and unlocking and doing exactly what we thought. Okay, guys, I hope this lesson was not too tedious. I really tried to get through it as quickly as I could. But I think you have to see is that the biggest part of this was to see that you didn't save the angle of the servo on the card. You saved the angle in a dictionary, and that dictionary had a card value and the angle for that card. So we used the cards and we used Flash and we used them together to make this thing work. Okay, guys, what your homework assignment is this last lesson was maybe a little tedious, and what your homework assignment is to now go in and at least get this thing working, this thing that I have shown you, get that working. And I want you to also realize that what we've done so far is we have just been, kind of using these cards to associate like where you were, like system data, but we haven't really used these cards as any type of security device, because any card could come in, any RFID card that you had could come in and unlock the system. So we're not putting any type of security or password. And so that's probably what we'll do in the next lessons. We'll probably go in and start thinking about, instead of just saving system configuration to a card, or, associated with a card, or saving, a user preference on a card, what we're probably going to do next is start thinking about this a little bit more in terms of actual security. Okay, guys, I hope you're having as much fun taking these classes as I am making them. It's at this point that I always give a great big shout out and thank you to my Patreons. It is the support of my Patreons that is enabling me to continue to make this fresh, new content every single week. So a big thank you to these guys. You can help this video if you'll give it a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. That helps me with the old YouTube juice. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, when you do, ring that bell to make sure that you get notifications when future lessons drop. And most importantly, share this video with other people, because the world needs more people doing engineering and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.